Welcome to the Slim CD presentation of EMV solutions for developers. We're going to present the EMV solutions that we make available to developers to ease their integration efforts. A little bit of information about our company. Slim CD provides a variety of ways that you can integrate to process EMV chip cards, and that includes the Augusta, which is a plug-and-play keyboard emulation reader. I'm going to cover that here in a minute. The Ingenico and Verifone pin pads can be run by a set of DLL libraries written in .NET for .NET PAWS systems, and we have the Slim CD EMV link, which allows anything with an internet connection to run full EMV transactions on any of the pin pad devices, and again I'll cover that in this presentation. So the three options give a variety of approaches to processing EMV transactions. The ID Tech Augusta is an amazing device that replaces a traditional MSR card reader, and I encourage you to watch our video presentation on the Augusta. It's really a special device. Just like when you swipe a card with a keyboard emulation card reader, you get regular ASCII characters in your keyboard buffer that you can then post over to the gateway. The same thing is done with the Augusta with either a swipe or an insert. It encrypts all the data for either chip or swipe. You plug it into the PC, no drivers are needed. It looks like a keyboard. It's very simple to install. Very powerful device, making EMV integration as simple as we've ever seen it. Our .NET DLLs run full Verifone and Ingenico pin pads, including pin debit and signature capture if you buy a device that does that. A very simple API, and with one integration to our libraries, you can support either Verifone's or Ingenico's device independent. It doesn't matter whether the device has a signature capture or not, whether it's a Verifone or Ingenico, it all works the same. Finally, there's EMV Link, which makes the Verifone or Ingenico pin pad part of slimcd.com, and now a developer accesses the pin pad with a simple web service call, the same way they might make a web service call to process transactions on the payment gateway. Instead, they can process transactions, light up the pin pad, and run a full transaction. We'll cover that in more detail as well. So here's the Augusta. There's a photo of it. As you can see, it's got a card swipe slot to swipe transactions in the traditional manner. It's also got an EMV insert slot. So it's really two readers in one device. It uses keyboard emulation, as I mentioned earlier, so that the data simply comes into the keyboard buffer. Now, an EMV transaction will give you more data than a regular card swipe, so if you're buffering this data or trying to parse the card data, you'll have to watch out for that. But I've had developers plug this device in without changing any code at all and be able to process EMV transactions, simply replacing their MSR card readers with one of these. Very, very powerful solution, really simple to implement, and again, there's a whole video just on the Augusta. Take a look at how it works. It's really worth paying attention to. It does support swipe cards, chip cards, fallback mode, which is when you can't read a card. You can do credit and signature debit. It doesn't have a pin pad, so you can't do pin debit, but you can do signature debit, which is check cards, debit cards that don't have pin. And you can also do gift cards with it. In the Augusta, a transaction is so simple, it's like a normal post to the Slim CD gateway where you include the track data in one of the fields that you post to us using any of our libraries or our JSON, in the libraries in any of the languages we support, .NET, PHP, JavaScript. In this case, I'm showing building an example of an XML document and posting it over. So it's the standard Slim CD fields just like you would have done with swipe, and instead you're posting into the track data field whatever came out of that Augusta reader, whether it's either swipe data or insert data. No changes to the code at all. Send it over in the track data field and we can process transactions with it. Simple HTTP post to our web services and you'll get back approved or declined. So it's no different than if you were processing mag swipe transactions, and because the device does encryption, these swiped and inserted transactions are out of scope for PCI. Very important point. Now, we do support a variety of pin pads. Here you'll see the Verifone MX915, or the 925 is a bigger unit, the same design but a larger unit. The IPP320, there's a 350 that's the same thing in color, and the ISC250, there's also a 480, which is a larger screen version of the 250. Now, the 915, 925, or the 250, 480 from Ingenico, both of those support signature capture. The IPP320 does not. All of them support PIN debit, as well as regular credit cards and, of course, gift cards. You can insert or swipe cards The ones that have signature capture, you can capture the signature as well. And we use the standard loads that come from the manufacturer. So there's no custom firmware put on these. In the case of Veriphones, you're getting standard XPI and form agent, and in case of the Ingenicos, you're getting the standard RBA applications. You can do custom forms, custom prompts, all the things that you might need to do within your environment, all capable of being done on these devices while keeping you out of scope for the PCI because of the encryption, and the EMV certifications because you're not touching any of that EMV data. So with our .NET DLLs that drive these locally from a point of sale system, there's three objects you create: a connection object, a configuration object, and a transaction object. A connection object simply identifies where is this device. If it's here in this example, it's done by a COM port, you specify the COM port. If it were an IP, you'd put the IPN port in. So you can put the information in an INI file. So there's any way you want to specify, here's how I connect to the device. Underneath that is a configuration device. To make this device act as you want to, you simply turn on or off flags. Do you want EMV enabled, swipe enabled, contactless enabled, cashback enabled? That will prompt for cashback. Credit cards enabled, PIN debit enabled, gift. Do you want the prompt for totals to confirm the totals? Do you want to capture signatures? Simply set up the flags the way you want them, and that's all you have to do to configure the device to tell it how to perform the individual transaction. Finally, there's a transaction request object. That's the third object. And this is very similar, almost identical to the standard SlimCD payment gateway request in our libraries. It has all the same field names as either in our XML or our standard .NET libraries, and I encourage you to look at the Direct Connect API videos and documentation to find out more about all the possible field names. But you can put all kind of industry specific data in here. In this particular case, we're using for the username an API access credential. Check out the video on API access credentials. It goes into depth about how you can use an access credential without a password, so you're not subject to people changing the password and bringing down the point of sale. If the merchant's manager logs in and changes the password, the point of sales are not affected. So we strongly recommend using API access credentials. They are supported within our .NET DLLs here, as well as all of our other APIs. So here I'm getting a device ID, finding out what the machine's name is so we know which POS sent this transaction. You put your product name in here. You're requesting a trans type of a sale, give me the amount, specify whether or not you're allowing duplicates. We create a hardware object, and in the hardware object we call the same process transaction name that you would call if you're calling the gateway. The only difference is you give it the connect request, the configuration, and the transaction request objects. You give it three objects. We'll connect to the pin pad, configure it based on the configurations, and run the transactions. So in a device transaction request, you cannot specify a card number, etc., like you could in a regular payment gateway post, like if you were using the Augusta. Instead, you're completely isolated from any possible touching of cardholder data, and you call the process transaction and you get back in the reply success or failure, and you put the corresponding message on the screen for the cashier, successful transaction or failed. Simplest integration that we can imagine for performing EMV transactions on device independence on Veriphones and Ingenicos. Now here's the transaction flow. Here's the point of sale system. In this case we're showing a Veriphone. Again, a little code snippet that does just about the same thing we showed. Create a connection request, a configuration, and you've got the username and password on the transaction request. Call process transaction and get back a response. So the merchant's computer, the point of sale system, has POS software running on it that links in the SlimCD DLL libraries. The libraries communicate with the pin pad and to slimcd.com, isolating the POS system from ever touching any of that information or being in scope for PCI or EMV, because the POS system is now out of scope because the data coming out of the pin pad is encrypted. Key transactions are another concern, but these devices that have pin pads, you can ask them to prompt on the pin pad of the pin pad device on the keypad. You can have the consumer type in their card number, and even that data will come in encrypted, so the POS never touches any unencrypted card information. Very powerful way to stay out of PCI. It's all done through these same entry points, very simple and easy to use. EMV Link is another approach with a very similar interface. The only difference is, instead of plugging the pin pad into the PC or into TCP/IP on the local network, you plug the merchant's internet into one port and you plug the pin pad into another port. This places the pin pad on slimcd.com's network, completely out of the merchant's network. Now the merchant gets to qualify for an SAQB in their PCI form, a much simpler form to fill out, and the pin pad itself is part of our network. This supports the same devices, the Ingenicos, the Veriphones, and it's all available simply by connecting the VPN, the EMV Link device. Here's the flow here. The merchant's point of sale system calls out to slimcd.com, which runs the EMV Link box and communicates with the pin pad, and then returns the response back to the POS system, so that none of the information ever even flows through the POS system's network at all. And if you'll notice, a lot of the information is very similar. A connection request, a configuration request, and a transaction request, the three same objects. And again, instead you have the POS VPN object, and you call POS VPN process transaction and get back your reply. Now this can be done from Windows, from Macs, from iPhones, Androids, anything that can call a web service. Now this example is using our .NET library, but these are simple web service calls that anything with an internet connection can do, and we encourage you to watch the EMV Link video to learn more. This solution also can work with our hosted payment pages, and even works with our website. It can work with a web-based or cloud-based POS without a problem, because those devices, those systems can simply perform web service calls to run the pin pad. A little bit of a comparison. The Augusta can do swiped and dipped or inserted chip cards. It does not do contactless. You can't key on it. It has no keypad. You can't display custom forms that prompt for custom data like email addresses or social security numbers, and it doesn't capture the signature. An IPP320 does indeed do swiped and dipped. Contactless will have that available this year, and that's actually 2018. That's a typo. Yes, we do keyed on the device, and forms. You cannot do custom forms because it does not have the display for them. Signature capture. This does not have a signature capture screen in it. The ISC 250 and the MX do indeed have the signature capture screens. Again, that's Q4 2018. That's a typo when I made this slide. So we do expect in 2019 we will have the MX915. At the beginning of the year next year, we'll have the MX915 performing contactless as well. So look forward to that. So the Ingenicos will be ready just in a few months here, and because this is already August when I'm recording this video, so we'll have this out for you in no time at all, and the Veriphones will have it beginning of next year. So let's go over the options again. So with the .NET DLLs, you're connecting directly to the pin pads through drivers installed on the PC. Through the POS VPN, there's no drivers on the PC. You're performing web service calls to run the pin pads. And the third option is you can actually launch the SlimCD for PC application. From your app, you can launch our app. In that case, you'll launch our app, it'll start up, it'll run the pin pads or the Augusta, and it will return approved or declined. The Augusta, also available, it's a no integration. What that means is you're simply plugging it in and you're processing transactions through the payment gateway the way you'd normally do through a payment gateway, and you still stay out of scope for PCI for the chip inserted and swiped. And if you want to stay out of scope for the keyboard for keyed in transactions, there's a keypad from the same company where you can key in card numbers just like the keypad on your computer, and it encrypts them. So a lot of solutions to keep you out of scope for PCI. Drop in EMV with the Augusta. It's as simple as there can be, and again, I encourage you to watch that video. And then all the other solutions are also as simple as we can make them with the .NET DLLs, the three object, the POS VPN, the EMV Link, the same three objects, really simple. So I mentioned SlimCD for PC can be launched. It supports the Augusta. It supports local pin pads through our own DLLs, the USB or TCP/IP. Of course, it runs on PCs, and then it does support EMV Link as well. With EMV Link, you can actually share a pin pad between two workstations. Very powerful. So if you're launching our app, here's our application with a Veriphone. You simply create an XML file, drop it in a folder that SlimCD for PC is looking for. It'll pick up the information, preload all the information, and then it'll process the transaction and write out a response file. And the merchant's transaction flow, the POS system launches SlimCD for PC, and it contains the DLLs that talk to the pin pad and talk to the cloud, and it writes out an answer file for the POS system. So now the SlimCD for PC, you can key in transactions in our screen here or on the pin pad, as well as run the full SlimCD for PC application, and the POS system is completely separated from the application that is managing the pin pads, and there's no programming to do except for creating a request file and looking for an answer file. SlimCD's hosted payment pages, and there's a number of videos available on them, can also support the Augusta built in, as well as the EMV Link device. And with the Augusta, you can do swipe or EMV. With EMV Link on a hosted payment pages, you can do swipe or EMV. We don't support keying on the keypad because the hosted payment page itself, you can key right in the page, and you're already out of scope for PCI. So there's no need to make the consumer type on a pin pad. But those are great solutions that you can integrate into POS systems, mobile systems, web-based systems, and you can cloud-based systems still run hosted payment pages to do all your work for you. We've actually got POS developers that run in the cloud that use a hosted payment page, so they don't have to do anything out of what they might normally do with a hosted payment page, and they can still process EMV transactions. So the value proposition we're offering is we're going to eliminate EMV and MSR certifications. There's no message formatting to do other than sending the data to our payment gateway. You don't have to be certified by the processor for bytes and bits, etc. And no EMV, which is a big headache to do the EMV certifications. The reduce your PCI footprint, in some cases qualify for a PCI SAQB. You've got a rapid time to market because everything we've done in the way of our APIs is designed for an application developer to use. It's as simple and straightforward as we can make it. In the case of the Augusta, plug it in the case of the other things, 3 objects. How do you connect? How do you want the transaction configured? What features do you want enabled? And here's the transaction data, the amount, and the customer information. And that's it. You get back approved or declined. There's tokenization encryption on every transaction, so the devices will do the encryption, and the responses from SlimCD contain tokenizations as you run the transactions. Plenty of videos we've created available on our site for that to explain how all that works. The pin pads can accept a keyed in input, and we also have a keypad from ID Tech that can do the same for keyboard emulation keypad. It's like the keypad on your computer, so a lot of ways to avoid PCI. EMV Link removes the pin pad completely from the merchant's network altogether. One of the best securities you can do because it's doubly encrypting all the data. Really an amazing, amazing product. And of course, the SlimCD software can be leveraged to perform transactions. Got a lot of developers that will perform their own sales at the POS, but let merchants perform refunds or do reports through the SlimCD websites or the SlimCD for PC software. So all that's available and all built and ready to go for the developer. Easiest possible integration we can make it. Here's our developer's website where you can find a lot of this information about our APIs and how to run them and all the different languages we support. Make sure you check out the download libraries. In this case, click on either EMV resources under the libraries and samples page or the VPN resources, depending on whether you're using the DLLs for EMV or if you're using the EMV Link, the VPN. So all that information is here. You'll be really happy to see the Augusta samples. And again, check out that Augusta video and check out the EMV Link video. I think you'll be really impressed with how both of those products function for you. So here's those links for you again, and thank you very much for your time.